Good morning, Paul. How are you?
Good morning, Dan. I've saved you a seat for the Texas A&M Northwestern State game. I know you would like to bring the whole crew over.
I love that. Yeah, that when those two schools get together, you throw out the records. I mean, it's
And you break a few windows in the process.
Where is Northwestern State?
It is in Natchitoches, Louisiana, and please don't ask me to spell it, and I don't even think I pronounced it correctly, but I once lived in Louisiana, so I visited it once. It's really a pretty city. Pretty good football tradition, not as much as Louisiana Tech with Terry Bradshaw, of course.
If you were going to have somebody go to the single most intense fan base game surrounding environment, what would it be?
I know it's a cliche to say, but I really like LSU because I lived in the state. I've been to so many classic games there, and I think a night game in Baton Rouge with Alabama coming to town, especially Nick Saban, and if it starts after dark, listen, the culture there loves to watch football, and they love to watch football after having been intoxicating themselves since whenever they wake up, which is usually not early on Saturday morning.
Has LSU forgiven Nick Saban?
Well, they have. Remember they won a national championship after Saban left with Les Miles, and his acolytes said for a long time that Saban had nothing to do with it, but he had everything to do with it. He left them a national championship team, and after Les was summarily dismissed 2 years ago, Nick, I think, is actually claiming credit for that LSU national championship under Miles. He gives him 47 national titles now.
All right, let's dive into the topic here. What happened at the University of Maryland yesterday? What did it mean to you, and where are we going with this story?
I saw a college president speak from the heart, and that may be the first time in my lifetime, Dan, that I've seen that. And you can quibble and argue that President Lowe was late to the party, but regardless of that, he took responsibility. He took legal and moral responsibility in today's litigious society. You don't hear that very often. So I appreciated that. I thought he set a very good tone. He didn't say a lot of things, and what I don't think he said was we are going to fire our football coach at the first available moment. And certainly there is some sort of due process going on right now with DJ Durkin, but I do not believe he can survive, and I don't believe he should survive. He brought these people in. He's on record in talking about the strength and conditioning coaches, saying we needed to change our culture, and he is the man to do that. He's a very intense individual, as a lot of football coaches are. But if you are to believe the ESPN article the other day about the culture of the program, which is separate from the death, it is a bad place and it needs to be corrected.
Yeah, I heard some culpability there with the president. It just feels like why did it take this long for everything? And I'm all for due process. Do your due diligence here. It just felt like Maryland was trying to say to that, that ESPN report, hey, don't believe that. The anonymous sources here. And meanwhile, ESPN did a great job in vetting this and bringing it to light. So why did it take so long to have a press conference like this?
Well, because I think for the most part, this death was overlooked, Dan. It only came up because the athletic director was being vetted in the aftermath, Damon Evans, and he was asked about it, and his answers apparently satisfied the committee choosing the new athletic director there. And I'm really curious. While Urban Meyer, and I know that's another subject, was questioned at Big Ten Media Days about the Zach Smith situation, I don't remember hearing anyone question Durkin about this situation. So I think we all moved on, as we often do, and it takes an explosive report. And I thought some of the commentary on the report were ridiculous, namely Will Muschamp. I don't know if you saw his comments, but Durkin worked for him and Urban at Florida. And he unloaded on it, saying you can't believe anonymous sources. And I'm not trying to be comical here, but I would remind Coach Muschamp to maybe go back in history and read all the President's Men to see if anonymous sources can change the future of our country. The anonymous sources helped overthrow a president, and they've done a lot of good things. I'm not defending blindly journalism because I've been in that business for a long time, because we get a lot of things wrong. But for the most part, anonymous sources, it takes somebody very brave to speak up about a culture, especially when they're inside that culture.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I called out Will Muschamp on this. I thought he was blind to this. You can have loyalty, but you also have to have perspective. And also when it comes to how this is going to affect other college programs. You know, when Corey Stringer died, Minnesota Vikings offensive lineman, it felt like, okay, it sent shockwaves through the NFL. Everybody is going to have certain protocol, their medical staff, defibrillator, whatever you need. We're going to have that with all these camps. Now, college is different. There's so many of these programs. How do you think what happened with Jordan McNair and this coaching staff, strength and conditioning coach, does it have any aftershocks with other programs?
I think it has to, because at every program in America, they had a conversation 2 weeks ago after the Urban Meyer situation broke, and I have a feeling they're doing it again. And this is fairly complicated, because when you try to change a culture at a program, and that's usually why you bring a new coaching staff in, the first place you go is a strength and conditioning coach. Not to bring Saban into it again, but when he brought Scott Cochran to Alabama, that was what he is often pointed to as the biggest change in the program. Cochran has been Kirby Smart tried to woo him away for seven figures a couple of years ago, and Saban kept him, because that is critical. That's where it all begins. And I'm not talking from experience. I'm talking from experience and talking to people who have been there before. And in this case, you have in Coach Durkin a very intense individual. I was reading a story today, Dan, that he was on Harbaugh's staff at Stanford and later at Michigan, and they would play one-on-one basketball games. And Harbaugh said later that they played a 90-minute one-on-one game. No fouls were called, and there was blood on the court. And I bring that up because that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about music professors here, and I don't mean to belittle them, but they are maybe a little calmer type of people. They may be equally intense, but they're not usually playing one-on-one basketball games with blood and guts. Football coaches are competitive, as many people in every industry are, and I think it's hard to be able to legislate how far you can go. But in this particular case, and the president said it better than I can, simple, basic mistakes were made that you could probably learn at a sixth grade, first aid class. I mean, it's inexcusable to overlook things like were overlooked on this day.
We're talking to Paul Finebaum, voice of the SEC, ESPN radio host. Is Urban Meyer in the clear at Ohio State?
I think he's pretty close, and again, we're all speculating. I think most of us who have given opinions on this have pretty much hit every corner of the square. It looked like he was gone early. It doesn't look like he is now. And I say that just based on having watched college football, Dan, and understanding the cynical nature of it. And I'm trying to get a good measure of that fan base who just doesn't seem to have any desire to try to get to the truth here or to believe the other side, and that's the most confusing part of this. And I suspect the six-person committee is hearing the same things that we have all heard, and it really has come down, unfortunately, to a he said, she said.
Urban he's avoided landmines for 3 decades now. I mean, it just feels like he knows what to do. He's built for it, and I think worst case scenarios he probably gets suspended a couple of games, but I don't know if it's going to amount to anything more than that. Your thoughts?
No, and listen, he is a great football coach, and no one will deny that. Would I nominate him for a good citizen award? No. His record at Florida was terribly flawed. I felt, and I know Urban moderately well through working with Tebow, and I've seen a different side of him. But the issue is Urban Meyer a bad guy? Did Urban Meyer use blind loyalty to his mentor, Earl Bruce, and looking past deficiencies and character and major character flaws in Zach Smith? And I believe he did, and I believe he looked past it to a point where it borders on being fireable, but without knowing all the facts. And right now, I mean, Zach Smith has denied everything. And not that he is to be believed. I watched his interview on ESPN, as I'm sure you guys did, and I mean, he was as cringeworthy an individual as I have seen in a situation like that. So it's hard to take him seriously in anything he says, because he is out to defend Urban Meyer at all costs, which is fine. Urban Meyer apparently has been defending and covering for him for a very long time.
Paul, good stuff. I appreciate your time. Know you're busy, and we'll talk to you during the season. Thank you.
Always a pleasure, Dan. See you soon.
That's Paul Finebaum, ESPN radio host.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.